Good morning. I'm in the midst of preparing a plenary talk for the upcoming ENRICH course that AACH is putting on in June at Stanford, focused on shared decision making, and I'll also be co-leading several workshops on the subject, which makes me want to tell you a story about how I got engaged in this work. Dr. Jack Winberg, a pioneering researcher at Dartmouth who helped develop the field of outcomes research, had tried for years to get me involved in doing shared decision-making research, but I was overwhelmed with my life as a mother of 3 young girls, an internist geriatrician, an educator who ran the clinical skills training, and thought it was just too much. And then I saw my patient Ginny, a wonderful, vibrant 68-year-old former Army nurse, in clinic and discovered a lump, and unfortunately she had early-stage breast cancer. Dartmouth has long been a leader in the field of shared decision-making, and I'd learned there were 2 equivalent treatment options with virtually identical outcomes, which meant that this was a preference-sensitive decision. And using the communication skills required to do shared decision-making, eliciting the patient values in the situation was critical to help the patient make the right choice for her. We had an excellent video made by the Informed Medical Decision Making Foundation about lumpectomy with subsequent radiation versus simple mastectomy, and gave Ginny a copy to view. And she came back to clinic very clear that what mattered most to her was to keep her breast. That was extremely important. I offered to refer to the breast surgeons at Dartmouth, who I knew would respect this preference, but since she lived in Upper New York State several hours away, she chose to have her treatment closer to home. So I sent her surgeon a letter explaining her history and her treatment choice, never got a reply. She returned to see me in clinic about 2 months later and was a shadow of her former self. She related that her surgeon had informed her she, quote, had to have a mastectomy. She then went on to say that she felt mutilated, and she even had trouble changing into a gown and letting me examine her because she was so mortified by the loss of her breast. She still hadn't allowed her husband to see the scar, and she was clinically depressed. Ginny's story was particularly upsetting to me because my wonderful grandmother had died of breast cancer after refusing any treatment, since in the early 60s a radical mastectomy was the only treatment offered, and she used the same words, "I refuse to be mutilated." So I think Ginny's story illustrates well the epidemic we face in the U.S. of preference misdiagnoses, namely clinicians failing to ask patients who are faced with a preference-sensitive decision what matters most to them. And I look forward to the day when a preference misdiagnosis is taken as seriously as a biomedical misdiagnosis. I look forward to seeing you at ENRICH. Hope you'll be there. Thanks a lot.